Stay in studio. All right. There we are. Hey, welcome to day 3 officially of our Niche Leaders Challenge. If you're joining us for all 5 days of this event, I'm going to get a couple things set up really quick. I'm going to pause my upload. Let me do this. Can't do this stuff until we get going. All right. So, welcome to today. I am thrilled to introduce you to my dear friend, our author and guest, Doctor. I always want to call you Doctor. Man, you have earned that. You should.
My doctorate on the streets, right?
Yeah, you really have. So, it's Caroline Dowd-Higgins. Caroline, thank you for joining me today. This is going to be fun.
Oh, thank you. I've been looking forward to this, Nicole. I'm so delighted and grateful to be here.
Yeah. All right. We're going to jump right in because Caroline and I were just having a really great conversation. I want to bring all of you into this conversation, but I want to start at the beginning and
Okay,
give you a picture of Caroline's story. So, Caroline, you are the author of Your Career Advantage. I've got my copy right here. There's
you
your
got it.
beautiful copy. So, this is your second book. We'll get into all of that in just a minute, but I want to start with the moment that you realized that you something major needed to change in your life, and it was during the writing process, right? Or
Yeah.
during the planning process. So let's go to the biggest, most important moment, I think, for you really in the last 3 or 4 years.
Oh, absolutely. So, Nicole, I shared with you, and I'll repeat it to our audience live listening. This book saved my life. Literally, I was deeply burned out. I was continuing to work 80 and 90 hours a week, and I was telling myself the false narrative that I loved my work and everything was okay. And I'm not blaming or shaming anyone. This was a choice. I tend to be an overworker. I have a tremendous work ethic, but I lost sight of my life ethic. And I was becoming ill. I had broken out in hives several times. My doctor said, your immune system is a mess. You've really got to be more aware of your health and well being. You know, you're burning the candle at both ends and you are debilitating yourself. And it wasn't until I really looked myself in the mirror and said, I need to get off this crazy treadmill or it's going to kill me. Moment in time that I saw this book as something that was truly a salvation and an opportunity to put that into practice. And it has transformed my life and my career.
Yeah. Okay. So now with that framework, that's where I want to go back and talk about where you were. So you were working for an employer. You were
I
working
was.
80 to 90 hours a week. You were working 7 days a week. You were on call. You took pride in that.
I did.
And yeah, right. And so Caroline and I have both a shared background that we worked in a corporate environment before, and we were high achievers.
Yeah.
And we both had this breaking moment where we realized that our health and our career ambitions maybe weren't in alignment. And I think that's why you and I so deeply connected as we
We
were
do.
planning this book. So
Yeah.
you're doing this job full time,
Yep.
and on the side, you've got a side hustle. We'll dig into why that plays
Yeah.
out as a very important step for you.
Hmm.
Um, and you have that moment where you're breaking out of hives. And that's a moment you realize something's got to change. You had, though, already started down this journey, and we were working on planning your second book.
We were. Can I pick
Mhm.
it up from there?
Please,
You
yes, that's it.
so let me take it from there. So I knew I wanted to write a book, and I came to you right as the pandemic sort of gotten to the point where we were in shutdown very regularly. So everybody was working from home out of necessity, not by choice. Also honoring the folks that had to be there on the front lines. It was a tough, tough time. And as an executive coach, as a career coach, and someone who's deeply ensconced in helping people navigate their career journeys, I was watching this unfold on LinkedIn. I've always been very active on LinkedIn. And I started doing a LinkedIn newsletter. And in the beginning, it started to get some traction. I had a few hundred people that followed me. And of course, I've been blogging for years and I had my first book. But during the pandemic, people were really worried. We were worried about the world at large. People were being let go or furloughed or any number of things.
Mhm.
And I started responding to what I was seeing on LinkedIn. I created a LinkedIn newsletter and it blew up, Nicole. I mean, thousands of people subscribed to this overnight because they needed a lifeline. And I realized at that moment, and I remember talking to you about it, I said, all of these articles are book worthy. They're
Mhm.
chapters and they're responding to people who have a need. So that was really the crux of the book. And of course, there was additional writing, but I took all of those juicy articles that I wrote in response to people in need and crafted a book. And the book is really about how to navigate your career journey with the advantage that you have power and control. Because I realized I relinquished my control when I was overworking. And that was something that I needed to reclaim.
Yeah. So you had a side hustle. So would you
Yes.
say that this newsletter was part of your side hustle, and what else were you doing on the side?
Yeah, and for clarity, because I know we've got a lot of people listening
Mhm.
who are thinking about launching their business or they're in their own business. So I was side hustling since 2011. That's when I started my LLC and I was doing coaching on the side, public speaking on the side, two great joys for me while working full time. So basically, I was using vacation time. All my PTO, not all of it, but a good percentage of it was the side hustle business. And in 2022, I took the brave, courageous chance to say, I'm done. I am done working for an organization. It was a great experience. I learned a lot. I earned a lot, all the things from the outside, the success looked really good, but I didn't have control or quality of my life. So in 2022, I broke off and turned that side hustle into a full time hustle, and I've never looked back.
Oh, it was a great moment. So I want to go back to that experience. So one of the things that makes us unique as a publisher is that we are more than that, right? So you and I started at the very beginning, which is
Oh, yeah.
what does success look like to you over the next 3 to 5 years? And I can't wait now looking backwards to
Yeah.
2022 and your book came out in 23. Is that right?
Yeah, 23,
Um,
exactly.
so I can't look like how is the success vision then compared to now? But that's where
No.
we always start. Like what do we need to do to get you to that success level? So I
Yeah.
love what you said, and we documented it because all of our
Oh,
clients
yeah.
have this breakthrough canvas that documents 9 key decisions of what this looks like for you. You want to repeat what you said to me in that moment?
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. So I remember it like it was yesterday because I was working full time, and I remember writing one afternoon and I said, "This is my happy place," right? I'm writing, I'm focusing, I'm creative, I'm an artist, which I am, always have been. And I thought, this is what I was put on this planet to do, this kind of rich, deep work. And I thought at that moment, why am I keeping the day job, right? That gave me the courage. And I remember calling you saying,
Yeah.
guess what? We had the book all mapped out. We were on target, on schedule, and I left way
Right.
earlier than I ever anticipated because
Mhm.
this empowered me with the confidence and the clarity to do what I was meant to do.
Yeah, I was so proud of you. It goes back to, why I do what I do, which is, people think I'm a publisher first. What I am is a business and marketing strategist.
Yeah.
And it comes from my own corporate experience of climbing the corporate ladder and getting addicted to workaholism,
Mhm. Yeah.
and realizing that that was costing me a heavy toll on my health side,
Yeah.
and realizing that I need to let this go in order to achieve what I'm trying to achieve. For me, it was having healthy babies.
Yeah.
So I let go. And so when I coach a client and I started coaching you, I realized like I can't continue to just add work to you. Like, how can we solve that? How can we create a vision that
Right.
does something bigger for you? And that's where when you ended up making that choice, it delighted
Well,
me.
and I want to tug on that a little bit because what I want our listeners to understand is you did coach me through that process. I'm a coach. I have other coaches, and you were exactly the voice that I needed to
Mhm.
give myself permission. You empowered me with that permission to say, do what you were meant to do. Was it scary? Sure, it was. But you also helped me intellectually walk through all of the fears, right? The
Yeah.
scarcity mindset. I remember we talked about, but I need health insurance.
Yeah.
Well, you can buy health insurance, right? You can feed a retirement account. So all the hurdles that were self generated obstacles, we cleared the path. And again, just gave clarity about how do we solve those problems. So I'm deeply grateful to you for that. The
Yeah.
coaching was transformational.
Well, we created a safe space for you to do that. And it wasn't just me. We've got a team, right? And
You
so,
do.
in fact, I connected you with somebody out of state that gave you the
Yeah.
complete permission to
Yeah.
privately just go explore. Well, what would that look like?
Yeah.
For
Yeah.
us, when we're working with our clients, what we're doing is helping them make an identity shift and a
Right.
transformation. And you're one of the greatest examples of that, walking that out in real life, of walking into a brand new identity. So let's fast forward because we're here right now. You
Yeah.
set goals of like this. I would feel like I won the lottery if I was able to
Yeah.
do this on my own. Now it's
And
3 years later. Have you won the lottery?
yes, I mean, I have, and I remember that so specifically because I'm sitting in my home office, and I remember that moment with you. You said, "What would that look like?" And I said, "Well, maybe I would be working 40 hours a week, and if I could only earn $100,000." And I was earning more than that at my job, but that
Mhm.
was intellectually where I was. And while I will first preface this by saying it's not all about money for everybody, and I'm not driven by money. However, money is important. Money matters. It's how we support our livelihoods and our families. So money does matter. And I blew those goals out of the water because I had this scarcity mindset of I can only do this much. And that was beyond what was actually possible. So now I talk about the art of the possible. My goal for 2024 is a 4-day work week, and I am making that happen. Starting in January, I'm working 4 days a week, and I'm earning, again, honoring the people listening. It's not all about money, but I'm earning more money than I thought was humanly possible
Right.
ever in my
Right.
career. And I've earned good money. I've worked really hard. So that idea that I couldn't do it was a self-generated obstacle.
So the money you were clinging on to from your employer was keeping you from the real potential.
Right, because I thought,
Mhm.
how can I replace this? And I fully had this idea, Nicole, that let me try it for a year, see what happens. I can always go back and get a job. That's a factual statement. But I fell in love with my life. I didn't realize what I had missed. So it's fall, the colors are beautiful. And this was the time, it was September of 2022 that I stepped off the career train with an organization. And I remember, this might sound so silly, but I'll be vulnerable and tell you the colors looked brighter.
Mhm.
My senses were different. I could smell and taste and feel and hear and see things so differently because I always had this cloud of exhaustion. And you said something so poignant. You said, I'm a, talking about yourself, you said, I'm a high achiever. And that just warmed my heart because I used to be an overachiever. And now I
Mhm.
realize I'm a high achiever and I'm really proud of that, but I'm not an overachiever because that led to burnout and exhaustion. So it was a
Right.
way to reframe that. I do extraordinary work and then I rest and recuperate.
Yes.
And that's the
Oh,
difference.
I so love it. All right. I want to go. There's so many things we could talk about.
Yeah.
Just and let's touch on briefly what was the best part of your journey writing the book?
What was the scariest part? Say that again. I think I missed
Fun.
that.
I love the
Oh,
fun. Let's
fun,
start
fun,
with the
fun.
funnest part.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I absolutely love to write. It's in my DNA, and writing a book can be daunting. But I would tell you what I loved about the whole niche team is there's a schedule, there's a process, there are accountability partners, and there are very bite-sized, tangible ways to do it. You don't sit down and write hundreds of pages, right? You do it incrementally. And I was going through old photos from social media posts, and I remember one of the plans at first was to have all the different index cards, right, with all the
Hmm.
themes and all the chapters. And I took a picture of that on my dining room table, and it was such a beautiful memory jog to just see the book evolve. So the joyful part for me was having that creative think time to really dive in and write something that was meaningful and that would help people. And it also helped me. So it was a chance to actually listen to my own coaching and realize, hey, you need to listen to what you're telling other people because it
Hmm.
works.
Oh, yeah. When the coach becomes the student is
Yeah.
always the
Yes.
coachee.
Yeah.
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 One of our authors, we were our Hollywood storytelling expert, and you could talk about Michael if you want.
Oh, yeah.
So Michael Haig is part of our process, and one of our authors, who is a master marketing expert, he got coached by Michael, and he's like, I don't want to do that. I don't really want to do that. And he goes, darn it, because I'm doing the same thing my clients do with me. They don't want to take the advice they're paying for. And he
Yeah.
goes, all right, I'm going to do it. And then he calls me back an hour later and he goes, that was the best decision ever. So yeah.
Yeah, and I think the beauty of your team, you at the top of that, is that you push us to take chances, to take
Mhm.
risks, and they're calculated risks. And yeah, sometimes we're out of our comfort zone, but it's always for the betterment of the project. I mean, I remember the title, right? We tweaked the title quite a bit. We tweaked covers quite a bit, and all for the right reasons. And I'm deeply grateful for that process, but also the trust there. I knew it was the right way to go.
Yeah. Your cover, I remember we had a lot of ideas on the table, and I
We did.
really love the idea that we ended up
I love
settling
the
on. Yeah.
cover. I mean, I absolutely love the cover. And you had even said to me, you fall in love with your book. And I
Mhm.
remember that, right before we were actually published and live, there's this moment of pride and joy. And you think, I did this and I
Mhm.
poured my heart and soul into this. And it's a journey and it takes time and it's an investment of intellectual investment, but also of resources. So, it's a big deal.
Yeah. So, what was the scary part? When was your scary
Yeah,
moment?
the scary part as a second time author and soon a third time author, I
Mhm.
mentioned to you right before we went live, I've already got book number 3 here, and eventually we'll start talking about what that looks like. But I would say there's always a fear of, will this be helpful? Will anybody else care, besides my immediate family and friends? And that will for me was so deeply resonant hearing all these stories on LinkedIn. I felt like I was writing based on what people were needing at that moment. So the relevancy was there. And at your great suggestion, I also had a lot of outside readers who gave me feedback and insight and counsel. They weren't my editors. I love your expert
Mhm.
team of editors, but they were able to give me reactions.
Yeah.
And I think that's important. We don't
Mhm.
write in a vacuum. We want to
Mhm.
think about what is that audience.
Yeah, and you had a great a network of
Yeah.
peers there that were helping you. One of your courageous things you did is who you asked for the forward of your book.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
I have to say, there's always trepidation. Who do I ask about the forward? Who do I ask about the endorsements? And you and I came up with this list. And I say this with humility. I've got some incredible people in my network. I've been podcasting for a decade. I've got A-list authors and speakers and thought leaders out there with whom I've worked and whom I've engaged and lifted up on the podcast. And even in the book, I feature a lot of experts in the book, and people are so generous, they're so willing. And you said, ask, you have nothing to lose. And to a person, everybody responded and was gracious and generous and shared with great enthusiasm endorsements and a forward. So
Mhm.
ask, you can never
Yeah.
lose if you ask.
Yeah. So let's talk about professional speaking. Let's go into
Yes.
there because that is that what you say is your main love now, or what is
Yeah,
it?
yeah. So things have evolved beautifully. So
Mhm.
when I was on the treadmill of the other job, and again, no blame or shame with the organization or the people, right? It was my choice, and I have great respect for folks that are still there. But I knew that I needed to change. I do what I do with many of my clients. The assignment is write your ideal job description. What would you love to do every day? Roll out of bed. And there were three things, and it was public speaking. It is public speaking, what I call executive coaching, and then also training and development. That might be retreats, that might be a leadership event, but things of that nature, which I often refer to as consulting. And I thought, this lights me up. This gives me mission and purpose and drive. So I knew that I wanted to do more speaking. I have a performance background and I
Mhm.
love being on stage, but it's not about the ego of being on stage. It's about delivering a message to a large group of people to help them. I really, truly believe that I am in service of others. And I knew I wanted to do more of that. So last year, I really poured into the business and revamped my website and led with speaking. I joined an organization that really empowered me to lift up my speaking. I got a speaking coach and was very intentional about how to lift that business. And I can say again with humility, I am in my happy place because it's going so well. bigger fees, bigger stages, bigger clients, and for me, bigger reach, which is what it's all about, right? How do I reach the most people and help them be happy and healthy and successful in life and career? I mentioned earlier, most people have a great work ethic. They don't have a good life ethic. And I believe now you don't have to swap one for the other. You should be able to do your best work and live your best life at the same time.
Okay, so let's dig into this a little bit more because so many of the authors that I come to, or that come to me want to do what you're doing. And they're like,
Yeah.
so I'm sure they're leaning in right now going, how is she, like, give me more detail about how she's
Yeah.
doing this. So if you want to be a highly paid speaker, let's talk about like what's a good range that you can expect to get paid for and what do you have to have on your resume to get that?
Yeah. So one of the things, so I've been adding a lot of these assets. Any speaker that wants to get books needs to have what we call a speaker reel, and that is
Mhm,
your audition video. And it's 4 minutes or less, and it
mhm,
shows you speaking. It might have some endorsement quotes, and it really gives a booker, whether it's a speaker agent, a speaker bureau, or a meeting planner, a sense of what you're like on stage. And they also want to know what's the deliverable, what's the return on investment. So we've got to have very clear, actionable things. I used to think that I will just receive the speaking interest or request for a proposal, and I'll customize every single keynote. I now learn as a seasoned speaker, you have three in your repertoire, and of course you do some customization for the client. But it's not like I'm going to write a brand new book every time a client wants to speak with me. Here are my two books, and another one's coming. The same with speaking. You've got repertoire that they can count on you for. So that
mhm.
was a huge realization.
Nice. Okay. So you've got a speaker reel, you've got your three keynotes, you've got
Mhm.
a book. You told me something interesting about the qualifications when somebody's
Yeah.
asking you if you should speak. You want to tell me what that is again?
Yeah. So I couldn't be more thrilled about this. So I'm humbly and gratefully doing larger events. So SHRM is the Society for Human Resources Management,
Hmm.
common acronym. And SHRM does two huge conferences every year. And I was chosen to be a speaker for the SHRM Talent Conference in March of this year, 2025. So I was in Nashville. So excited. And it was a debut for a brand new keynote. And I remember when they reached out, I had submitted materials for consideration, which is how it works. Certainly, you've got agents and bureaus that are looking for you, but you've got to be proactive. You can't just rely on them. So they called me back and said, "We're very interested in having you share your keynote at this event. Do you have a book?" And I said, "Why, yes, I do." And they said, "Is it less than 5 years old?" "Why, yes, it is, because I published with you in 2023." And they said, "Great, because we want fresh books." So, in addition to doing the keynote, I was in the SHRM bookstore and did a book signing at the event with 10,000 people. I thought that I had died and gone to heaven. It was just the most incredible thing. But the book was part of why they
Hmm.
scheduled me. It was why they hired me to do that event. They need speakers who are thought leaders and published authors.
Right. It's almost a must have, right?
Oh,
To
it is.
get on a
Yeah, it
stage kind of thing.
absolutely is. It absolutely is. And that's why I'm also very serious about what's next, because I
Mhm.
realize those resources are your calling cards. And I'll get a little technical, Nicole, if you don't mind. We call it value stacking in the
Mhm.
business world. So if someone calls me and wants me to do a keynote or a workshop or a breakout session, I always say, let's talk about how my book can be an evergreen resource that adds value to the attendees, whether they've got it in their gift bag, their swag bag, or if they have a book signing or a bookstore at their event. This is something that they can remember me by. And then the spin is they may call me for an executive coaching opportunity,
Right.
or they may have an event next year and they call me for that. So again, it is an asset and a must have.
Yeah. So have you what experience like have you personally had as a speaker? There's several different ways to earn revenue with your book when you're speaking. Sometimes our authors are able to um, get a copy, put it in every goodie bag, right?
Yeah.
Or bulk buys and there's different aspects. What's worked for you incorporating your book into your whole package?
Yeah, yeah. So very often I will be the one to bring it up. If it's a
Mhm.
large conference and they've got a bookstore, they're going to bring it up, which is
Right.
wonderful. But again, let's say it's a Deloitte conference, right? Or it's a women's conference that happens. Often, it's an opportunity for me to say, as the prospective speaker, this can enhance the experience for your attendees. And it really does, right? People love to be able to have some kind of a resource that they can go back to because you think about it, the keynotes, and often they're short, they might be 45 minutes. I've even done 30-minute keynotes because our human attention span is shrinking. So everything is compressed. But that book is something that people can rely upon and return to after the event. And that helps the meeting planners too, because then there's a return on investment. It's not just, hey, I heard her at a conference, but I don't remember what happened tomorrow.
Yeah. I have a message or a tagline that I use, which is put your brand in their hand. Right. And
Yes.
so
Yeah.
it not only
Yeah.
does it add value to the audience, but right, there's a sticking power. So your book then leads them back to your podcast, it leads them back to your other offers,
Absolutely.
right? So it's opening all kinds of doors for you.
Yeah, and years ago, I know I still have business cards. Some people may, but we're so digital. We
Yeah.
don't use those assets as much as we used to. But you better believe I have a box of books in the back of my car because
Right.
I am always packing. Right? You never know who you're going to meet, and maybe there's an opportunity that you're having with a prospective client, and you give them a copy of your book. That is an
Mhm.
investment in that relationship. It
Right.
also, I guess I wasn't as aware until I got onto the speaking circuit. It validates you. It is a credential that empowers you to be viable in a competitive market.
Mhm. Right. Um, so I want to go into writing a book in the AI world. First, let me ask you this. What have you seen? How is AI impacting what you do and your business?
Yeah, so I use AI as a tool. I love to write. I've always considered myself a writer. So for me, that's a great joy. So I don't necessarily use it to write things
Mhm.
like a post or a blog or a chapter because I love that process. However, I do use it for research and I do use it to shorten and truncate things. So for
Mhm.
example, you've got to feed the social media beast. And for me, LinkedIn is my platform. I've got 12,000 followers and connections, and I've got over 5,000 people that subscribe to my weekly newsletter. So that is a really great space for me. So often when I'm pitching a client, I will put in kind of a stream of consciousness brain dump to say, here's what I want the client to know. Hey, Claude, I happen to use Claude. Can you condense this into a 100-word email that's pithy and in my voice? And then I attach my website so Claude is being trained to use my voice
Mhm.
for that pitch for that email. That's a good use of my time.
Yeah. So as we're looking at how we're changing how we coach authors in
Yeah.
2026, this is my world right now. I'm heavily involved in this. So
Yeah.
I'm a strategist, right? And the first thing that I'm seeing is our authors would be mortified if the world thought AI wrote their book.
Of
Right?
course. Yeah.
Yeah.
We all
Right.
would.
So
Yeah.
that's our market. So we're not looking for people who want to use AI to write their book.
Yeah.
However, it's, to say don't use AI when you're working on your book is like saying don't use the internet or
Exactly.
like a calculator to do your math.
Oh,
Right.
yeah.
So we are very pro AI, but at the end of the day, our editors, when they're getting books, they're like, oh, we can tell that
You can
AI
tell.
wrote chapter 3, right? This just doesn't
Yeah.
work, right? And so
Yeah.
how do you fix that? But what I think is more interesting is a conversation we had just before we started too, which is you mentioned your book for 2026 would be shorter. And I
Yeah.
want to dig into this a little bit more.
Yeah. Okay, so let me also incorporate keynotes. So classically, it
Mhm.
was a 60-minute keynote. I have not been booked for a 60-minute keynote in 2025. They've been 45 minutes or 30.
Mhm.
And some even hearken the TED Talk duration. And
Mhm.
I've done a TEDx talk. It used to be 18 minutes. Now they want you to do it in 10 minutes because our human attention span is so small. What is that? 7 seconds of a goldfish, right? That's
Right.
what we used to talk about. So similarly, books need to honor that. And it's about how do you capture someone's attention? How do you give them compelling content that they can digest and then put into practice? And that's the kicker for me. It's not just about edification, right? Learning something for your own use. How do I take what I've learned and put it into practice? And that's really the kind of writer that I want to be. And similarly, the kind of speaker, we call it an activation speaker, someone who shares tools and resources that people can put into practice. And that's the kind of author I am as well.
Yeah. Oh, so one of the things that I like as we're looking at now is the shift of what goes into a book. So that's the science that I'm playing in.
Hmm.
If you look at pre AI,
Hmm.
the value was in information. Let me show you
Yeah,
exactly how to do this. But
yeah,
now in an AI world, information is free, right? It's
right.
infinitely available and it's customizable to your situation. If you want
Hmm.
to know how to start a business, you can ask AI how to start a business in
Right.
Indiana, in my county with this demographics, and get a very specific plan. But what is unique that AI can't do is the human side of things.
Right.
And so,
Right.
right. And so what we're looking at, my phrase right now is don't write a book like it's 2024. Right?
Yeah.
How do you write a
Yeah.
book in 2026? And what's the science that goes into a book? And where are we more focused now, which is on this idea of transformation, right?
Yeah.
How do I give my audience on stage or in a book the opportunity to go on an experience design,
Yeah.
right? And then we're looking at the business, the book, the stage. I'd love for you to speak more on that.
Yeah, I'd love to riff on that, and I'll talk specifically about several people. So when I think about Michael on the niche team and the importance of telling a story and thinking about the emotional arc, and it actually impacted my podcast. I have a lovely team of women who work with me on my podcast, and a few years ago we instituted what we call a pre-call. And the pre-call happens with my executive producer on the podcast, and she interviews the prospective guest. One, are they podcast worthy? Not everybody's a great podcast guest, excuse me. They might be a great author, right? But are they verbal? Can they articulate things well? And that emotional arc is what Michael helped me with in the book. And
Mhm.
also, how much of yourself are you putting out there? And how vulnerable are you willing to get? What I believe from the stage and also from the page, right, with the book and with speaking, is that we need to be vulnerable. People want to see the good, the bad, and the ugly. How did we struggle? How did we recover? How are we resilient? And anybody can read a textbook and they're fine, they serve a purpose. But the books that come out of Niche Pressworks are deeply personal and transformational and empower the audience through the journey of the author. And that's
Yeah.
what makes it different.
Yes. I can't wait to dig into your next book in this conversation because when you look at what we're doing, most people when they sit down to write, they look backwards and they're trying to
Yeah.
decide what's the book that's easiest for me to write.
Yeah.
Right. And what we're doing in our process is looking forward, saying, well, what's the brand you want to have over the next three to
Right.
5 years? And we're
Yeah.
going to write for that. Now, what's
Mhm.
unique about that experience means we have to find the book idea that's wide enough for you
Yeah.
to explore different avenues over the next 3 to 5 years because we're writing to where you haven't been yet. So we have to
Yeah.
create opportunity in that. And so that's where I think the fun play is when I'm working with an author and trying to find like the common denominator of who they
Yeah.
really are, their core identity, and then
Yeah.
what's the unique book idea that would be fun for them to write and magnetic for their ideal audience. And I love that you do that on stage as well. So what are you thinking about for your own business and talks for 2026 and beyond?
Part of that is I've got to continuously keep my finger on the pulse of what's happening in the world of work,
Mhm.
because that is the space, the arena that I play in. And one of my strengths, when I think about the Clifton Strengths tool, is futuristic. I've
Mhm.
always been someone who's forward minded, who's thinking about what's next. You are too, I know. And that's why we love each other, right? We get that in each other. And I'm looking at trends. I'm looking at what's happening. I mean, look at how AI has evolved so quickly, and we've just scratched the surface. So part of it is what's coming and what does that next 5 year chunk look like? Everybody may have a different duration, but that's kind of where I see myself in 5 year chunks. So I'm already thinking about what is the world of work going to look like? What are the challenges going to be? We're getting a glimpse of that right now. A lot of organizations are calling their people back after they've enjoyed flexibility in a hybrid or a remote work environment. We've got perpetual layoffs and furloughs. So is the modern day careerist navigating their life and career? So, I wrote a little bit about the burnout journey, my own journey in Your Career Advantage, but that's something that I want to take to a new level because it's
Mhm.
reaching uh, epidemic levels. People are sick. People are dying,
Right.
Nicole. It's bad. It
Mhm.
really is. And I'm so grateful that I got off the train before it crashed.
Yes, yes. Well, what I love about your last book is, I've watched you over the years have a lot of room to focus on different topics. So you focused on vitality, I think, originally. Then you went into workaholism. I know, recently, I believe you've been focused on leadership and
Yep.
leading yourself, leading others. So that was the really nice thing about the breadth that your book allowed you to do over the last 3 years is it gave you different sides of your personality and room to talk.
Yeah.
Um, and now, the other thing you can start to do is say, well, zero in on topics. So you'll
Yeah.
see a lot of speakers do that. They'll do the wide books and then they'll do several narrow books and then they'll do another wide book. What are you thinking?
Exactly. Yeah. So, for example, one of the things that I work on with my speaker coach is what is the wide topic that's relatable to everybody? And then how do we narrow it using your great language for the healthcare industry or the tech industry or women, right? There might be
Mhm.
a very particular audience. So, the customizing happens when you have this beautiful, broad, and juicy topic, and then you can zero in. And one of the beautiful advantages of being an executive coach, I really am in the trenches with leaders all over the world. And this book has also empowered me to work internationally. So I do have some incredible international clients for whom I am deeply grateful. And it happened because of this book. I'm starting to book international speaking engagements as well. So it's not just a national focus for me anymore, it's absolutely global.
Yeah, that was part of your dream.
I know.
That's great. I love hearing that. Okay, so um tell me what oh, I know what I want to ask you. So you have introduced us to several people that you're coaching over the years. What's your advice to someone who is looking at doing what you did? They're currently in a career position. They're
Yeah.
debating on all of this. What's your advice?
Mhm. Yeah, I have a retreat coming up with a colleague
Mhm.
in Chicago in January, very specifically for women. It's called Future by Design, and we really help women who are stuck thinking about what's next. And one of the things that we talk about is how do you plan with intentionality what you want? And I'm broad brushing here because I know men can be caregivers and nurturers as well. But typically, women take that role. We're taking care of everybody else in our families. If you're in an organization, you might be looking out for colleagues. And we rarely look in the mirror to say, what do we need? So, the first bit of advice to anyone thinking, maybe I do want to flex my entrepreneurial muscles, or maybe I do want to pivot and write a book or become a speaker or do more of that if I've started with baby steps. Give yourself some quiet time. I was so busy, and I don't even use that word anymore, but I was so busy that I didn't have the headspace to have the clarity to think about what I needed or what I wanted. And one of the beautiful benefits of stepping off that organizational train was giving myself the space. And I write about that quite a bit, wrote about it
Mhm.
in Your Career Advantage. The white space to have the creative clarity to think about what I really wanted, even if it's 5 minutes a day. What do you need? What do you want? So that's step one.
I love that you're doing a retreat. Tell me again, where can they learn information about your January
Yes,
retreat?
yes. The website is called your futurebydesign.com, yourfuturebydesign.com. And our signature retreat happens in January, on January 30th in Chicago. We've done them in Indianapolis, and we're looking at additional locations all over the US. It's an intimate event with 12 women and two executive coaches, myself included, and my dear friend and colleague, Jenny Henderson. And it has been transformational, and we just love to do it. And it's an amazing opportunity to connect with other women, find some relatability, and find the courage to do what you've been meant to do and give
Mhm.
yourself the action step to make it happen.
I think, the critical white space that some people need because it's so hard. I remember not being able to identify what do I want?
Right,
I don't know
right.
what I want.
Yeah. And
And
the classic career question, I didn't mean to interrupt you, Nicole. Please keep
go
going.
for it.
The classic career question, what are you passionate about? That scares the heck out of people, you know? And I would say, don't think about passion. Start to think about, what do I like? You know, start
Yeah.
small. But that's too big a question. You need to literally sit down and have some space. And my coach challenged me, this is a great challenge that I would encourage everybody to do twice a week, figure out what days, find 1 hour where you can be quiet. Maybe you're journaling, maybe you're reflecting, maybe you're walking, right? You can have a walking meditation, and don't worry about sitting in the lotus position quietly if that's not your jam, but give yourself that space and just see what bubbles up, right? We rarely have that gift of time to think and dream, and it's important.
Oh, I yeah, my calling spot is a chair in the sunbeam and a
Yeah,
blanket
yeah,
and a journal, and I'm good to go. I
good
think
to go.
one of the biggest unfortunate mistakes that I had in corporate America, and I was at Caterpillar, is all of my career advice was coming from my management team.
Yeah,
Right. And I, of course, was in an era where that was, how do we keep her inside of our walls? How do we retain the
right.
talent? Right. So no outside voices. Like, you would have been such a wonderful gift to me. The outside voices are really critical. Looking back, and now what I'm advising my own daughters, who are now 22 and 24, is you have to have somebody on the outside who's looking out for you, that you're paying, who's coaching
Yeah,
you, and can look at all the aspects of what's your potential and how do you do this. You want to speak to that?
I do. I thank you for teeing that
Mhm.
up so beautifully. And I will say, there are some organizations where there are internal coaches, and I don't want to disparage them. That's a wonderful perk, a wonderful opportunity. But the benefit of someone from the outside is they're objective and they're an absolute safe space, and they can honor that confidentiality. And I wrote about this in Your Career Advantage, and I truly believe this. Smart people need to ask for help. And often we get stuck in this mental movie. I can do it on my own. I have to do it on my own. Nobody will believe me if I can't do it on my own. That's bunk. Really
Mhm.
smart people got to where they are because they asked for help along the journey. And I think you would agree, Nicole, that really smart people also pay it forward and help other people. So I have this incredible community, some of whom are paid coaches that I really rely on. Some are friends and family and coworkers and colleagues. And that's a beautiful resource team for me. So I would say you do not need to do it alone, and you shouldn't, right? You're not going
Right.
to go to your dentist for legal advice. So think about the experts that you need to fill those voids.
Yeah. I think one of the other big mistakes that I made in my Caterpillar career was not teeing up ways to demonstrate my expertise when I left.
Yeah.
So I had a performance review, I had a management team. And what I did is I came home, and 5 years later, everyone who knew what I was capable of had retired, and I
Ah,
had nothing, right? So I left in order to come home and have children and raise my children for 5 years. So a little bit of our backstory was my health problems that I had tied to my workaholism inside of a great organization. Um, Appears to have cost me 4 or 3 miscarriages, and we had an infant who died of a rare
oh my.
heart defect shortly after she was born. And I started to connect the dots that the stress was the common denominator among all of
Yeah.
those, right? So I'd gone through the genetic testing, and everything else was fine. And so when I shifted inside of the company to a less stressful job that was a promotion, that's when I got healthy and had babies 5 and 6. And as I said, those girls are now 22 and 24. So, but the mistake is I then left to raise them because I'd fought so hard to have them that I just couldn't put them in daycare. That was my choice.
Mhm.
Um, and then I'm like, but I'm bored. And by the time they were old enough for me to start saying, now I want to do my thing and I want to build this business, I had no evidence that I was great at what I was great at. So, what you did so wisely was that side hustle. You wrote the first book on your,
Yeah.
and you had the podcast. I would love for you to give that type of advice to people. If you're thinking of leaving, what do you need to make it on the outside world for that
Yeah.
confidence of your own?
And I say this with great admiration, but there are a lot of people that leave quickly and they try to spin up an entrepreneurial venture, their own business, but they don't have a community. Not
Mhm.
only a community of resources to help them, but a community that becomes your client base. So since 2011, I've been cultivating this robust client base. And I say this with great respect because I worked really hard to get there. They are vibrant and they are supporting me, engaging with me now. So think about the audience that will become your clients. You've got to be really savvy. When you're an entrepreneur, whether you're selling a product or you have services to offer, whatever your expertise, you can only do it if other people pay you to do it. So be mindful of what your value add is. Be really clear about who your audience is and who your ideal client is, and take the time to invest in that business plan. And
Mhm.
it doesn't have to be the formal business plan, but the concept of, what am I putting out into the world? How do I price it? How do I make it irresistible and indispensable? And who are the people that will buy it? Those are
Mhm.
really important questions to ask. And you can do all that lead up before you say, I'm out on my own and ready to go, unless you have a heck of a financial nest egg and you've got that savings in the bank. And some people do it that way.
Mhm. Yeah.
I did
Yeah,
not.
it's yeah, it's a hockey stick growth that there's
Yeah,
yeah. So
yeah,
when you start early, I would add to it that finding your unique value at the core,
absolutely.
right? And so
Absolutely.
that's what we're doing with,
Yeah.
when I work with a client, it's like, what's your brand? Right. And so what's your
Yes.
brand? What's your message? What's the book that's going to give you the most
Yeah.
flexibility? Can we write that behind the scenes
Yeah. And I will
now?
also say, what I love about working with you and the team at Niche is also that the brand evolves.
Mhm.
Whether you're in an organization or you are an entrepreneur, our brand can get dusty and we need
Mhm.
to freshen it up, right? So I've had a website for decades, but it has evolved and I am always polishing it. And I worked with my web team to reinvent my website to say, now I'm leading as a speaker, for example, right? So,
Right.
speaker, author, executive coach. And it's really important that everybody remembers, you can't just develop a brand and then walk away and think it's going to last. You have to constantly pour into that so people are aware of it. And so it honors where you are.
Oh, I think it also gives you vitality, right? Like,
Yeah.
let's throw that word out there. It's really fun. We're in the middle of
Yeah.
rebranding, so I think we're going to release our new brand in January. That's my plan, 1st of January. So we're going from Niche Pressworks to Niche Press. But what
Oh, nice.
that'll be our imprint. So for those who are listening, we are an author-owned publishing company. So what that means is, if you look at Caroline and others like her, all of our authors own their own retail accounts. You own your own book, your own content. We do all the professional services for you, but we also then give you our imprint, which means we are your publisher. That
Yeah.
gives you the market credibility you need, and it also then means that your content was professionally edited and vetted. So
Mhm.
you get the best of both worlds. But I think, particularly today, what's so beautiful about what we're able to offer our authors is you're able to buy your book at cost directly from the printer,
Right.
right? Which is
Right.
really, I think,
Oh,
especially in this world, so
huge,
important.
huge.
Mhm.
Yeah, and I will tell you, I have either myself purchased them and sent them to the client, they're reimbursing me, or the client has bought it on the front end. Thousands of books
Mhm.
because they're at events, they're at retreats, they're at programs. So don't lose sight. Anyone who's listening, thinking about, yes, of course, the people that are in their local bookstore or watching on Amazon, and yeah, they can buy your book, but don't underestimate the power of getting your book into the hands of larger audiences.
Yeah. And when you own, like, it's literally $2 to $4 easy profit when you own the print rights versus when someone else owns the print
Right.
rights.
And that's a
Mhm.
very important income stream. And I will
Yeah.
also tell you a trend that I'm seeing, and I'm curious, Nicole, if you're seeing this with other niche authors, but audiobooks are just
Mhm.
blowing up. People want audiobooks because they're listening in the car or they're walking the dog or they're in the school line waiting to pick up their kiddos, right? Whatever. So I would tell you that the audiobook is also a really important opportunity.
Yeah, we're having fun with audiobooks now because there's so many things you can do in
Yeah.
audio to enhance the experience, right? So I'm always looking at what is the user design experience.
Yes.
How do they go
Yes.
from your talk to your book, or from your book to your talk, to your coaching, to your courses, to your retreats? And
Yep.
we look at the whole value chain for everyone and say, how do we create the best experience and help people get better results? So the book is just a fraction of that whole picture. And And so when we're looking at audiobooks, you can have fun in audiobooks that you can't do
Yeah.
in print.
Exactly, and
Mhm.
what I narrated my own book, and I would
Mhm.
always encourage people to do that first, and your team teaches you how to do it and coaches you through that process, but then the listener is hearing you, right? And there's a
Mhm.
deep personal connection, and I think our listeners would be surprised how many of those listeners reach back out to the author and say, "Hey, I wanna learn more," or they become
Right.
a client.
Yeah. Well, they're bonding with your voice,
They
right?
are. Yeah,
Nothing more disappointing to me when I buy an audiobook and it's somebody else's voice. I literally
yeah,
I will now check to make sure it's going to be their voice. I listened to an
yeah.
audiobook once and it was written by a man, but it was a woman's voice recording it. And she kept
Oh,
saying I as in situations like, there weren't like male female
yeah.
situations and it got very confusing. I'm like,
It was just a disconnect.
I
Yeah,
can't
I
take
hear
this. Yeah. I
yeah,
can't take this. So, all right. I just want to circle back to, as Michael Haig would say, the aftermath because it's so
yeah.
beautiful. You were afraid to leave a six-figure career
Mhm,
for a
mhm,
very nice career. You want to talk a
mhm.
little more about that because that I think
Yeah.
that was the lie that you were
Yeah, yeah, it was
believing.
it was it was a fear of the unknown, and I
Mhm.
will say, I'm a risk taker. I just am, that's how I'm wired. So I was getting in my way and I was risk averse, which I'm not. I'm the kind of person that will jump and then figure it out. So I realized I was getting in my own way, but once I took the leap, the whole world opened up. The business came. Now, there's work involved. So this isn't just magic, right? I poured into this, but the world changed in such a positive way, and the aftermath is that not a day goes by that I don't jump out of bed excited about what I'm doing. And a lot of the minutia that was taxing and exhausting, like perpetual meetings, I call it meeting palooza, right? And the politics and some of the yucky parts of working for an organization. And I don't want to stress people out that are in organizations. Call me and we'll talk about that. Right? But I mean, the reality is what was stressing me out dissipated. And I really got to pour into my life in such different ways. My relationships are richer. I love my husband. He's my soulmate and I get to spend so much more time with him. And I'm traveling to clients that I'm excited to go to, right? I'm living my best life. And this was something that I wish that I had done sooner. And I'm also in full belief that it happened at the right time. So
Yeah.
it's okay. And now the rest of my life, while I don't know exactly what will happen, I do know that I've got my power back. I've got my health back. I've got joy. Who knew, right?
Mhm.
Life is joyful and suffering doesn't have to happen, right?
Are we at is it 2 years or 3 years this Christmas?
It'll be 3 years, this Christmas, and I wrote about that in the book. I mean, how many times did I was home, my family lives on the East Coast, I was there, but I was tethered to a laptop or a cell phone on Christmas Eve, and I get
Mhm.
it. There are emergencies, there are crises that happen, and those happen even in my business now, but that was the norm, and
Mhm.
I now have a new norm that I have designed and that I have created, and I realize if I didn't stop it, my life would have just happened by default. And now my life is happening by design.
Mhm. That's awesome. All right. And I do want to acknowledge you can do that inside of a corporate environment too. There are
Yes.
people.
Yes.
Yeah. So
Yeah.
you don't have to leave.
Yeah. And
What you have
I'm
to
really
do.
Yeah, I'm really glad you said that because I don't want anyone listening out there that says, "Gosh, I really like my job, but it's a little difficult or I've got a crazy boss." Well, by the way, there's a chapter for that in Shameless Self-Promoting. But find someone, find a coach, find a mentor, find someone in the organization or outside who's a safe space because you can navigate a vibrant career in corporate, nonprofit, higher education, government, pick the sector. Your journey may not be like my journey, but what I'm telling you is, and this is a catchphrase that I have, the suckiness is real. It really
Mhm.
is. The suffering is optional.
Yeah. Go find your joy, right? Go
Yeah,
find your joy. And then if you want to speak, you want to write a book about it and stay in your job for 1 year, 2 years, the rest of your career, whatever that looks like. It's just so important to have a part of you that's doing the work that you really love and sharing what you
right.
want to share.
Exactly. And for me, that drive to learn new things, to have that intellectual stimulation of really complex, juicy work, it's there because now I can design that and I can seek that out and I can respond to those opportunities. So I can't say enough about how lovely it is to reclaim your power and have that control.
Whatever that looks like. Oh, Caroline, so good to spend time with you.
Thank you.
Anything we didn't cover that you just want to share from your heart?
Yeah, I would say, is it a scary journey? Yes, but it's everything that's worth doing. My grandmother always said, if it's not a little scary, it's not worth doing. So we'll honor her memory and say my niche pressworks, soon to be niche press experience was transformational. You have this team that literally supports you, surrounds you from day one, and there's clarity and there's curiosity and experts that come in to help you along the way. And when we have those meltdown moments, it's either you, Nicole, or someone else on the team that will help you navigate that. So having written another book with a different experience, I can say that this was by far and away the most incredible experience of my career.
Wow. What an honor. What an honor. Thank you so much. Well, thank you also for the time today. It's this we've done this before and I just love spending time with you and watching how you've evolved and grown and you're walking out that plan. Let's do it again. I'm ready for the
Let's
next
do it
one.
again.
Let's do it
Absolutely.
again. All
Yeah,
right,
and
anybody?
I would share too. I mean, if anyone wants to talk about my niche experience, reach out to me. You'll find me online, carolinedowdhiggins.com. Happy to share more detail.
Please, yeah, please do. So, all right. Thank you so much to everyone who has joined us. We appreciate you and continued support. If you want to know more about us and you want to take your own book readiness score, we've got a brand new assessment on our website. My team will drop that in the comments here, but it's currently www.nichepressworks.com. If you're listening to this in 2026, it'll be nichepress.com, where you can take that assessment and find out are you a great fit for doing this, doing it now, and doing it with us. So thank you so much, Caroline. Again,